Hello everyone. Welcome to the Internet of Things Learning Center, where we connect the do-it-yourselfer to the Internet of Things technologies and concepts. I'm John, and I'm going to walk you through a quick setup of your Raspberry Pi. So let's take a quick look. First of all, in my kit, I got a case. I got the Raspberry Pi. I got a 16 gigabit SD card, and I got a HDMI cable. And that's about it. It was a pretty simple case, but it'll suffice for what we're doing here. I wanted to take a moment and walk you through what you receive in the Raspberry Pi itself. The Raspberry Pi 3 has 4 USB ports. It has a Cat5 port for Ethernet. It has a 3.5 millimeter audio port. It has a ribbon cable connection for a camera that you can buy from Raspberry Pi at the Raspberry Pi store. Probably get it also on Amazon. It has the HDMI port for output to your monitor. It has a small USB port for power. It has a ribbon cable connector for a display that you could apply right to the case. They have them as small as the case itself, which is about 3 inches or so here. So that's pretty much an overview of the general components. You also have the pins that are down here at the bottom, and these are GPIO pins, and these allow you to connect to a breadboard like this one through the ribbon cable. And what happens is you're then able to control devices and components through the power of the ribbon cable, through the breadboard. On the back, we have an SD slot for the SD card, which holds the operating system for this Raspberry Pi. Now, those SD cards can come from in the kit, and they can have noobs already installed, which is, and then the Raspberry Pi operating system can be brought down by the noob software. So those can be preloaded, or some, if you have your own SD card, I'll show you how in the next video how to bring the software down to the SD card and go from there. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this thing together. What we're going to do is we're going to grab this piece of the case. This is the bottom, and you'll notice this slot here at the end. This is where your SD card installs once you have the Raspberry Pi mounted into the case. Then you have the top of the case, which is simply a press fit to go down on top of the bottom here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this Raspberry Pi, and we're going to make sure we know where our SD card is, and we're going to line that with this hole on the bottom of this case. What you need to do is make sure that you do not have your SD card installed when you try to do this assembly. This is because it could break the Raspberry Pi, or it could break your case. It could also break the SD card. So it needs to be out when you do the install. And you simply set the Raspberry Pi down into the case and press gently, and you will notice that there's some pins here at the bottom. They'll actually align with the holes in the Raspberry Pi, and you shouldn't have to press real hard. Next, you take the top of the case, and you make sure you know where the slots are for the USB, and you simply align it with the USB on your Raspberry Pi, and it clicks together just like so. You'll notice that the GPIO pins are open to you through this slot, which allows you to have access for your ribbon cable to attach for your breadboard and your other components for you to do programming against. Now, once you have this assembled, you can go ahead and take your SD card, which if it came with the noob software installed, or if you've loaded the different version of OS for the Raspberry Pi, you can simply go ahead and install it in the slot here. Now this is a friction fit, so you simply push it in. When it stops, it's good to go. Next item is to go ahead and take your USB power and plug it in. And then finally, your HDMI cable, plug it into the port. The other end of the HDMI cable would go to your monitor. You also need a USB keyboard and mouse. I have a wireless one that I bought from Walmart for about $16 and $20, something like that. And it works rather well for this as just a small keyboard. I recommend that you initially set up your Raspberry Pi with a monitor attached and using a USB keyboard and mouse. I find it's a little bit easier. There is a method by which you can set it up using what's called a headless connection, where you don't need a monitor, but I find that to be a little more difficult initially. You want to know that your Raspberry Pi is working as expected, so setting it up with a monitor the first time is not a bad idea. So that's going to do it for this video. In the next video, I'll go ahead and show you how to bring the operating system down onto your SD card in case you did not receive it fully loaded. And then I'll also go ahead and show you how to set up that remote access to your Raspberry Pi, that headless connection, and some additional tips on that remote access that I prefer and the reasons that I prefer them. And get that information to you, and hopefully you'll be up and going with your Raspberry Pi and having a great time.